I can't do a series of Harry Potter videos without discussing the man himself. Harry, despite being a chosen one and an orphan, didn't seem to suffer for falling under tropes so many now complain about. It wasn't his unusual appearance, or his wealth, or even his destiny which made him engaging to readers, but the way in which his personality was handled. Harry has a rare kindness in him, a determination to see the best in others and look out for the underdog. After enduring a childhood without love, he is empathetic. He's also witty. Who can forget those infamous sassy Harry moments? Moreover, he's flawed in very human ways. He procrastinates on his homework, relying on Hermione to help him, and he can have a temper. Both the good and the bad contributed to making Harry a character that felt real and relatable. However, in exploring Harry's life, it's not just the books or the future we need to explore, but the past. Harry's family history is extensive. Although he's the protagonist, there's plenty new to be learned about the character. Before we continue, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I rant about fantasy books, characters, and lore. I also offer writing tips and post on Fridays. If this sounds like your cup of tea, hit the subscribe button and recommend this channel to one person you know. If you're already subscribed, also recommend this channel to someone you think would enjoy it. The Potters were an old family. They were of pureblood status, and founded by Linfrid of Stinchcombe. Linfrid's nickname was the Potterer, which over time became shortened to Potter and used as the family's surname. Linfrid was a potioneer, a skill he'd pass on to future descendants. The connection between the Potters and the Peverils came when Hardwin Potter married Iolanthe Peveril. She was descended from Ignotus Peveril, one of the three brothers mentioned in the tales of Beetle the Bard, and the youngest. Ignotus was the brother to ask Death for the invisibility cloak, so that Death would not be able to hunt him down. It wasn't until he was quite old that he passed the invisibility cloak on, and this tradition would continue to the present day, with James bequeathing the same cloak to his son Harry. That's right, if you've only watched the films, you might have missed that Harry is descended from the youngest of the three brothers. However, the family connections don't stop there. In yet another portion removed from the movies, readers learn that Voldemort is descended from the Gaunt family on his mother's side. Though poor and unkempt, the family clung to its pride. As bigoted, if not more so, than the Malfoys, the Gaunts were muggle-hating Parseltongues. If the Potters had the invisibility cloak for their heirloom, the Gaunts had the resurrection stone. After all, they were descendants of Cadmus Peveril, yet another of the three brothers. They kept the stone hidden in a ring, which Voldemort would later transform into a Horcrux, and it was Dumbledore who retrieved the stone from within the ring and placed it in the golden snitch he left to Harry. As such, Harry and Voldemort are technically very distant relatives, with both being descended from the famed Peveril brothers. Harry's ancestors were widespread. A branch of the Potter family went to the United States just at the end of the 17th century. There, Abraham Potter joined the Magical Congress of the United States of America, the state's equivalent to the Ministry of Magic, where he became the first of 12 orders to comprise MACUSA. It took genealogists centuries to connect Abraham to the Potters of Britain fame. Harry was technically related to his godfather Sirius as well, because at one point Charles Potter and Doria Black had married. Sirius, for his part, was related to the Malfoys through Bellatrix's marriage, and Tonks was a niece of Bellatrix, being the daughter of her other sister. In this way, all of the old families, including the Potters, had some kind of tie to each other. It wasn't just the Potters from the United States who sought careers as politicians, as Ralston Potter and Henry Potter also operated in the Ministry for Magic as members of the Winsigament. Their jobs would have offered financial security to the family, but it was Harry's grandparents, Fleamont and Euphemia, who propelled the family to great wealth. Inheriting some ability from Linfrid, they were also potioneers, though they chose to focus on the cosmetic side of things. They invented the Sleek Easy's hair potion. Given the description of Harry's hair in the books, which grows back within a day and is always untidy, it's not hard to deduce that the whole family suffered from a constant bad hair day. Consequently, they invented a potion to ease their problem, and in selling them, they amassed a vast fortune which Harry would later inherit. James grew up with wealth and the doting of his parents. They had James unusually late in their lives, and were aged even by wizard standards when they raised him. As such, James was spoiled and he grew arrogant. There was nothing his parents wouldn't give him, and on leaving school, he had more wealth than he knew what to do with. Of course, James wasn't a terrible person, but it would take Lily to draw out his nobler side. As a Muggle-born witch, less is known of Lily's lineage. She was born as Lily J. Evans, and was the sister of Petunia Evans. The girls were initially close, but when Lily began to exhibit magical talents, Petunia bullied her sister. Secretly, she was just jealous, going so far as to write a letter to Hogwarts begging them to take her too. Though Dumbledore was kind in his reply, he made it clear there was no place for Petunia. At first, Lily didn't know what her talents meant, but she met a boy her own age, Severus Snape, who explained they were both magic. He taught her about the wizarding world, explaining such concepts as Hogwarts or Azkaban, so that by the time she received her letter, Lily understood everything. Unfortunately, where Lily gained a friend in Snape, she lost one in her sister. Petunia, in her jealousy, couldn't forgive Lily, and she went on to hate magic. Lily began her school career in 1971, where she met James. It was not love at first sight. Though Lily worried about the company Snape kept, given he hung out with fellow Slytherin boys determined to join the Death Eaters, she remained loyal to him. Her being in Gryffindor and Snape being in Slytherin did not prevent them from being friends. However, as much of a bully as Malfoy was in his youth, James couldn't look past such borders. Snape was an awkward child, and the target of James's attacks. Though James was popular and a skilled member of the Quidditch team, Lily actually seemed to despise him. Because of his treatment of her friend, Lily was all too happy to tell James off. It wasn't until their 7th year that James lost his nastier traits. Becoming kinder and more responsible, he managed to earn a position as head boy, despite having never been a prefect. Lily was also made into the head girl, and the two finally started dating. They married in 1978 and joined the Order of the Phoenix, just as Lily's former friend, Snape, signed on with the opposing Death Eaters. Harry's story begins on July 31st, 1980. He was born in Godric's Hollow, which was the home of not only Godric Gryffindor at one point, but Dumbledore and his family once too. The Potters were quiet, their location known only by Sirius. Sirius was in attendance at Harry's christening, and he exchanged letters with the family. In one letter, found by Harry more than a decade later, Harry was seen flying a broomstick. Though not even a year old, Harry already showed signs of being a decent flyer. In his flights, he managed to destroy an ugly vase Petunia had sent the family, as well as endanger the family cat. The fact the toy broom was a gift from Sirius seems fitting, given he'd later gift Harry with his firebolt. In their quiet existence, the Potters did have some interactions with others. The famed historian Bathilda Bagshot also lived in Godric's Hollow, and the letter noted how she doted on Harry. On hearing that Voldemort could be after them, the Potters took precautions. Following Dumbledore's advice, they cast the Videlius charm. Only they, along with a secret keeper, would be able to locate them. Dumbledore offered to take the role, but James and Lily were loyal to their friends. They entrusted the task to Sirius, who, in his own trust, suggested they make Peter Pettigrew the secret keeper. Sirius believed he'd be too obvious as secret keeper, but this proved to be a mistake. It wasn't common knowledge that Sirius had passed the role on. As such, when the Potters were betrayed, it was assumed he was responsible. Nobody expected Peter to be a spy, and as soon as he had the necessary information, he went directly to Voldemort. in 1981, Voldemort stormed the house. He could see how unprepared they were, joking around and laughing. James didn't even have his wand on him, leaving it in another room. It was all too easy for Voldemort to dispatch James, and then Lily when she refused to move. Her magic, being based on love, was little understood by the unfeeling Voldemort. However, in giving her life, she created a barrier around Harry which could repel even the supposedly unblockable killing curse. It rebounded on Voldemort, reducing him to an incorporeal spirit. The curse left the famed lightning bolt scar behind and caused a piece of Voldemort's soul to linger in Harry, making the infant a Horcrux. Through this piece, Harry became a Parseltongue and developed a telepathic connection to Voldemort's mind. However, the death of Voldemort's soul would cause Harry to afterwards lose these abilities. Hagrid retrieved the baby Harry from the wreckage of the Potter house. Dumbledore directed him to deliver Harry to the Dursleys on Privet Drive. On the way there, Hagrid was met by Sirius. Sirius wanted to take Harry, considering himself now Harry's guardian, but Hagrid insisted on following Dumbledore's orders. Sirius wasn't thrilled, but he wanted to help. He left his flying motorcycle with Hagrid and pursued Pettigrew. Nobody yet had reason to suspect Sirius, but Dumbledore's choice to send Harry to the Dursleys had more to do with his blood. Petunia was the only remaining blood relative of Lily's. Only as long as Harry remained in Petunia's care would the protection of his mother last, and consequently Privet Drive could act as a kind of safe haven. Though Harry was safe in the care of his aunt, he wasn't loved. He grew up ignorant of not only the wizarding world, but his parents. Questions were forbidden, and Harry didn't have so much as a photo of Lily or James. He was instead told they died in a car crash, and he attributed his scar and the flash of green light he could recall to this supposed incident. In this way, Harry was raised as a muggle, because whenever something odd happened, he couldn't explain why. He was punished for his unintentional spats of magic. The Dursleys had an erroneous belief that it could be squashed out of Harry. Harry's childhood was miserable. His cousin, taking a cue from his parents, started bullying Harry. While Harry was given a cupboard to sleep in and occasionally denied meals, Dudley was damaged in his own way. Given too much, Dudley became overweight and spoiled, throwing tantrums if he didn't receive everything he wanted. While Dudley had lavish birthday parties, Harry could expect to receive old socks or coat hangers. Even his clothes were second-hand, being passed to Harry from Dudley and therefore fitting him badly. Harry's aunt Marge added to these abuses. She made a point of hitting Harry on the shins so that he'd let Dudley win at musical statues, and she allowed one of her dogs, Ripper, to trap Harry in a tree well past midnight. When Dudley received a robot for his birthday, Marge gave Harry dog biscuits. Arabella Figg, a squib, acted as a correspondent to Dumbledore, keeping an eye on Harry and reporting back. She agreed to babysit Harry, though she couldn't make their time together enjoyable. If she did, the Dursleys, determined to keep Harry unhappy, would stop asking her. Harry was only able to attend the zoo with Dudley on his 11th birthday because Mrs. Figg broke her leg. During this occasion, Harry, not knowing he was a Parseltongue or even a wizard, communicated with a boa constrictor before freeing it. Though this wasn't intentional, the snake escaped and Dudley was trapped in the enclosure. School was also rough on Harry, mainly because of Dudley. Harry was friendless and chosen last for everything because kids were frightened of his bullying cousin. The school he attended was known as St. Gregory's Primary School. Harry, through his accidental use of magic, turned his teacher's wig blue, apparated onto the school roof, and shrank Dudley's jumper, though Petunia assumed this last incident was because of the wash. When not in class, Harry's free time at school was spent running. Dudley and his gang chased him in a sport they dubbed Harry hunting, though thankfully Harry was always fast enough to outrun them. At home, Harry also became adept at dodging Dudley's punches. Harry's eventual invitation to Hogwarts spared him from attending Stonewall High, a secondary school Harry had dreaded attending. The letters came quietly at first, but then arrived by the hundreds when the Dursleys continued to ignore them. Harry was kept from reading them, but he was given the upgrade of his own bedroom when the letters mentioned his being under the cupboard as a part of his address, as the Dursleys were fearful of being called out on their abuse of Harry. The letters reflected this, noting Harry was now in the smallest bedroom. The Dursleys fled their home, trying numerous hiding places, but the letters always found them. Finally, they fled to a shack, but Hagrid came personally to not only deliver a letter, but the first proper birthday present Harry would receive. Hagrid explained to Harry that he was a wizard. Harry had just turned 11, it being midnight, and Hagrid gave him his own birthday cake. Hagrid's cakes weren't exactly delicious, but it was the thought that counted. Harry had never received a proper gift, though Dudley's greed would also deprive him of his cake. This resulted in Dudley receiving a pigtail from Hagrid, which would later have to be surgically removed. Hagrid also explained to Harry what had happened to his parents, and he took Harry to Diagon Alley to purchase everything he'd need for school. In the course of a day, Harry learned about Gringotts, dragons, and Voldemort. He learned he was famous, and that his parents had left him a great fortune. He finally understood why he not only had strange abilities, but why he was an orphan. Voldemort had killed them, but it wasn't easy for Hagrid to tell the story. Every wizard continued to have a fear of Voldemort. It remained taboo for people to say his name, and so he was instead known as the Dark Lord, or He Who Must Not Be Named. Having not grown up in this fearful environment, Harry blurted out the name casually. Though this would always make people jump, it wasn't a habit Harry ever dropped. He'd continue to use the name normally, no matter how much it bothered others. If it wasn't enough that Harry and Voldemort were technically relatives, their wands were related. Ollivander was honest with Harry, explaining that the phoenix which had given a feather for his wand had also given a feather for the wand which had chosen Voldemort. Despite its unfortunate relative, which had been used to kill Harry's parents and leave the scar behind, Harry was quite fond of his wand. He later learned that the phoenix which had provided its feathers was none other than from Dumbledore's bird, Fawkes. Given that Harry himself had unfortunate relatives in the Dursleys, it wasn't hard for him to sympathize with his wand situation. Besides, none of the other wands took to him, and Ollivander never went wrong with his decisions when it came to matching wands with their owners. Harry's background is the most extensive of any character in the series, extending not only through his childhood but to his ancestors. Because of this, his story will be told in 2 parts. In next week's video, I'll explore Harry's adult years. What stands out to you in Harry's backstory? Are you shocked by his relatives? Do you wish the Dursleys would be charged by child services? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.